What a day, folks. What a day. The Homeland expansion for Root had its Kickstarter launch today. Of course, it had to happen right when my first class of the day started at 11 a.m. Ever since then, I've been bouncing off the walls waiting to have a chance to come and record this. It's incredibly exciting. What they've put together for this expansion, or what they're still in the process of putting together for this expansion. Yeah, I just want to go through it really quickly, talk a little bit about what we know so far. I'm not going to get too into the weeds because, of course, all this stuff is still in development and is subject to change. Just as a quick overview, of course, we have the frogs and the bats, the two core factions for this expansion. And, in the Woodland Warriors Discord and, in different Root Discords online, I've been talking with people and discussing, what the other big thing that we wanted to see from this expansion was. And people had differing opinions on whether they wanted a third faction, a set of 2 new maps, or a new deck. And personally, I wanted the new deck. A lot of people understandably wanted the third faction. Some people also wanted the maps. Well, it turns out we're getting all 3, which is insane. The maps were shown a few weeks ago. Deck was confirmed by Josh maybe less than a week ago leading up to the expansion, but the third faction was kept completely secret and pretty much nobody saw it coming. I certainly didn't, and I honestly think it might be the coolest one of the 3. From what Josh has said, it's the least developed. It still has a ways to go. It seems really, really cool. So let's just get into it. So here is, I'm on the Kickstarter page, of course. Here is the cover art, and as you can see, the third faction is going to feature these skunks. This is Patrick Leader's swamp map, a mock-up for it. Here are the meeples for the bats. They changed the eyes from the bats that they showed on a design stream they did a while back. I think these new bat meeples look a lot better. Frog meeple, of course, already great. And the skunk meeple, which looks pretty cute too. We have here the Squires and Disciples deck. Okay, this is the first thing they're putting on here. We actually don't get to see more cards than these 2 on the Kickstarter page. Josh showed us another one in the Discord, but these 2 cards themselves are completely insane. So this mouse one on the right is called Brazen Demagogue, and it says that playing a dominance card does not take your score marker off the track. So basically that means you can have dominance or dominances, multiple, I think, by rules is written, active while also having the 30-point win condition active, which I don't really know how impactful it's going to be strategy-wise, but it seems really cool just in concept. Off the top of my head, the cats, maybe the rats, or maybe the lizards could make decent use of this, sort of like a pincer movement. And I think that's cool because all 3 of those factions tend to score slower and more linearly. So having that, instant win button, like threatening people and forcing them to waste actions, policing it, as long as they position themselves so that they don't lose too much when those clearings are inevitably policed, I think that could be really cool. This bird card on the right is Council Advocates, and basically that one says the game does not end when someone else hits 30 VP. The game ends at the end of your turn after someone has reached 30 VP. So basically, you have this card crafted, someone in turn order before you reaches 30 VP, normally the game would end. Now it doesn't, and everyone before you, and then you, has a chance to, I assume, surpass them on the score track, or at least tie them, because there's no rule to say who would win in that scenario, because the game currently doesn't support scoring more than 30 points. But when choosing to resolve effects, the player whose turn it is chooses the order. So I imagine if you're tied with another player at the same number of points, you would win because it's your turn, and obviously you would choose yourself to win before anyone else. So those 2 cards in themselves are crazy. The third card that Josh showed in the Discord is a class of card, 1 for each of the 3 denizen suits, like the partisans. Oh, and by the way, crafting costs, if you can't really see these, the mouse card, the dominance one, is 2 mouse, and the bird one is 2 wild. These are single suit of their respective suit. Rabbit Squires, Mouse Squires, and Fox Squires. In battle, you may reveal a rabbit card. This is Rabbit Squires. If you would take hits, take one less hit and discard it. If you would take none, return the card to your hand. So that is interesting. For factions with, lots of cards and not much use for them, think maybe crows. They can use this to good effect because they don't really care if they have to discard the card. Also, it says here there's bat and frog hirelings as well as the neutral farmers. The farmers are shown later on. The prosperous farmers, they are ducks, and the meeple is just incredible on these. Completely adorable. And they have these farm buildings. I believe you start with 3 of them, 1 warrior at each, and during daylight you draw 1 card for each farm you rule, and you may battle at a farm or you may place a farm or warrior at each farm. So, neat. The farms are buildings as well. So that's neat, but the meeple really, for me at least, is the coolest part of those guys. Alright, so now let's talk about the factions themselves. So first up is the Bats, the Twilight Council. Sickened by the enduring conflict, the Twilight Council hosts assemblies to end the war, bringing together all the woodland from the lowliest mouse in a sack to the mightiest hawk with a royal claim. The assemblies emphasize political connections over pure numbers of warriors, pushing the factions away from bloody battle and toward heated debate. As the council progresses in their mission, they can declare edicts to change how the assemblies work, manipulating their enemies' incentives and actions. Yeah, so the Bats are really cool. They have a battle replacement type action called assembling that they can do at their assembly, either buildings or tokens. I don't know if that's fully fleshed out, whether they will be buildings or tokens. Hey, Editing Cole here. I forgot to mention that other players also may take the assemble action at assemblies. Just wanted to make that clear. And there's been a few iterations of this, but long story short is it's a way to remove enemy warriors that isn't explicitly battling, and also if other players try to battle at your assemblies, they have to discard all of their cards of the that match the assembly. So birds and cards of that suit. Like a mega outrage. Of course, they take the majority of their actions in the evening because they're bats, very thematic. But like I said, I don't want to get too into the weeds with the actual faction design because a lot of it can still change. I love this edict card art with like the hypnotic eye bat pointing at the new law that he's passed. Next, the Lilypad Diaspora. Scattered long ago and suppressed ever since, the Lilypad Diaspora now returns to their woodland home. While they hope to reintegrate peacefully, peace is rare in the midst of civil war. As they train their warriors, they must ensure that their desire for safety does not tip into outright aggression. With weapons at the ready, a simple misunderstanding between the Diaspora and the woodland can flare into vicious reprisals, hardening the Diaspora's militancy and spreading resentment against their cause. From what I understand, the frogs are the most quote-unquote finished. They're the closest to finished of the 3. Of course, they're all going to undergo a lot more testing, but the frogs are closest to their final iteration. And as you can see here, they add a new suit to the map. You can see they have these tokens that say coexist or replace. So what that means is when the clearing is peaceful, it is both a, for example, mouse-suited clearing and a frog-suited clearing. Or if they're militant, it covers the mouse suit and now it is only a frog-suited clearing. So in their evening, they score 1 point and draw 1 card per peaceful frog token that they have in the clearing suit with the most, unless more militant than peaceful frog tokens are on the map. So you can completely shut down scoring if all of your tokens, or more of your tokens, are militant than peaceful. Whenever frogs get battled, if they have a peaceful frog token, it flips to militant. And when an enemy removes a frog token, they must discard a frog card from their hand. You might be wondering, what is a frog card? Frogs have their own deck that they add to the game that people can draw from. They do this in Birdsong. There's a step called Reconcile. In the order you choose, enemies may give you a non-frog card to draw 1 frog card and flip a militant frog token with their pieces to peaceful. And the frog cards include things like, obviously all the cards are frog suited, which is relevant for matching the frog clearings. Very interesting for stuff like the Eerie Decree, Badger Retinue. Having frog suited cards in there can be pretty crazy. But they include things like On your turn, peaceful frog tokens with your pieces are your crafting pieces, which is pretty cool. But then you also have like the frog suited ambush, the frog dominance, favor of the frogs is also in there. I believe frog dominance requires you to rule, oh gosh, is it 4 frog clearings? Or no, it's a regular dominance, but half the map has to be frog suited for you to play it in the first place. So there need to be at least 6 clearings with a frog token. So that's interesting. Frog dominance with that card that doesn't take your score marker off. That's crazy. You stack frog dominance with bird dominance with a regular suited dominance. My god, that would be insane. I wonder if they're going to make it so you can only have 1 dominance card active at a time, because obviously that hasn't been an issue before. And yeah, I didn't want to get too into the mechanics of the bats because they're not as set in stone yet, but I do think both of these are quite cool. Not to play favorites, but I'm a little more excited for the frogs at the moment. But the knaves of the Deepwood, oh man, these guys are sick. Nobody really knows how the knaves of the Deepwood got together, but the myths are many. From the tree line, these miscreants and ne'er-do-wells sally forth, raiding barracks and baggage trains, and making off with warriors in tow as hostages. Why? For ransom, that's why. Some say they give the proceeds to the needy. Some say they spend it lavishly. Either way, their celebrations ring out through the night, the music swelling from the forest depths where few dare to go. These guys are based on the Vagabonds. So it's a band of skunks that are led by 3 vagabond captains. It says here, uses 3 Vagabond character cards and meeples at once. The Homeland expansion will include 3 more unique character cards and meeples, which you can use with this faction or as the Vagabond. And I don't want to get into, again, the specifics of this faction because Josh said it's the most likely to change, and will probably change the most out of the 3. But wow, it looks cool. So you get 3 Vagabonds. You assign 1 as your birdsong captain, 1 as your daylight captain, 1 as your evening captain. They and the skunk warriors can move into and out of the forests, ignoring rule. But these Vagabonds are they're not treated like the regular Vagabond. They're just warriors now with special rules. The captains can never be in the same clearing. They can be in the same forest, but they can never be in the same clearing. They always get removed last in a battle, that is to say, all the skunk warriors must be removed before you can remove the captain. And the captains, you get like a pool of all of the Vagabond's starting items. You assign 1 of them to each captain to start, and then you can gain more in a couple of ways throughout your time playing. You use them to supplement your actions. It seems really cool. Of course, you can use the torch to activate the specific captain's special ability. So one that seems really crazy, and I really don't know how they're gonna treat it or if they're gonna change anything about it at all, is the Scoundrel, because obviously every Vagabond starts with a torch. That means you have 3 torches to nuke clearings with if you can get them in the hands of the Scoundrel, and it may take some finagling, but you can do that in the current iteration. That seems crazy. And of course we have to talk about how they score as well. That's through the hostage system. So when they remove warriors in a battle, they can drag them into the forest where they are placed as hostages, and then they can return them during a hostage return phase where they roll dice, and based on the roll they return X amount of hostages and score X amount of points. So that's interesting. That probably, if I had to guess, is going to get tweaked in some fashion. But oh my gosh, these guys seem like such a cool movement puzzle. There's so many different permutations with, there's going to be 12 Vagabonds now, and you can have, if you treat Thief being the birdsong captain versus Thief being the evening captain as 2 different captains, there are 1,300 plus permutations of the knaves just in the 3 captains. They're crazy. And they do replace the Vagabond. You can't play in a game with the knaves and another Vagabond, which honestly I'm not too upset about. If these guys come out really good, I'm going to be giving the Vagabond a long break. They will not be appearing in my drafts for the foreseeable future if this faction comes out as awesome as I think they're going to. Next up, we have the Marsh and Gorge maps. So the Homeland expansion includes 2 new maps. The Marsh map can be changed in size during setup to suit your tastes. You can play it with the standard 12 clearings or make it larger to support games with 5+ players. I'm really interested to see how they're going to make that work. They haven't really given details about that yet. The Gorge map has a wild geography, creating natural choke points and concentrating warfare in the central clearings further emphasizing the importance of map position. The Gorge map is really cool. It was designed by Lord of the Board, who you should all know, hopefully. And yeah, he just set out to make a map that felt like it was in the style of something Leader Games would make, and it really does. I know they have to retool at least some of the forests to accommodate the Badgers, because it was made before the Badgers came out. Kyle Farron is, of course, going to redraw all of the art, but, you know, super cool that Sam's work is getting canonized. First fan content to be canonized as official content. Super exciting. Opens the door for more stuff to happen like that down the road, which is also exciting. But congrats to Lord of the Board. How cool is that? The Squires and Disciples deck, which I talked about at the beginning. Try out new strategies with the Squires and Disciples deck. Just like the Exiles and Partisans deck, this deck can be swapped in to replace the deck from the base game. You should replace the deck from the base game. This deck includes cards inspired by the Marauder and Homeland factions and abilities that depend on hand composition with a dash of goofs and shenanigans. Want to change when the game ends or how dominance cards work? You can. Now, Josh did say that these two cards that are shown here, Brazen Demagogue and Council Advocates, are the only two cards that work that way with like changing scoring and how the game ends type of stuff. All the other stuff is based on, for the most part, the 4 newest core factions to the game. I'm excited to see what they come up with. Josh is hoping that he is able to design this deck in such a way that it does not require a Saboteurs-like counterplay to the extremely broken cards that Exiles and Partisans adds. And one of the ways he said he's working on doing this is having like quote-unquote temporary permanent effects. So basically a persistent effect that lasts for 1 turn and then is, you know, discarded or maybe returned to your hand and you have to craft it again, something like that. That's interesting. I think that's definitely really cool because then you add a timing puzzle onto the existing hoops you have to jump through to craft the card initially. And whereas timing with ENP mostly comes down to someone would have crafted Saboteurs by now if they wanted to, right? Like I should just craft the card now, or should I wait and see if I can draw a Saboteurs to protect my own card? Like that's really the only timing consideration that comes around the ENP. But if Squires and Disciples makes like the timing of which turn you're crafting these cards on a really big consideration, I think that'll be really cool. So yeah, I just wanted to do a quick rundown of everything in the expansion. The expansion itself, and then we have the add-ons to the Kickstarter. You can get a neoprene mat for the Martian Gorge. You can get, this is really exciting for me because I never managed to get the deluxe clearing markers. They're the only thing that I don't have currently. They are available again because they're also printing deluxe frog clearing markers, which will go on top of the regular ones, or they're able to if they have to when the frogs go militant in that clearing. So that's great. I'll be picking up both of those, and also the cardstock faction boards, which is just much thinner faction boards to save space and storage. I'm mainly getting them as like a backup for the boards I have, so that if, you know, a board gets damaged or stained or something, which there have been some minor things, but nothing like that makes them unusable. But if something like that does happen, I can just replace them with one of these rather than buying a whole new expansion or base game. And then an Eerie plushie. But yeah, so I'm getting, of course, the base tier with the factions, the maps, the new hirelings, and the deck, which for $50, I mean, that's really crazy. An extra faction compared to a normal Kickstarter, along with the maps, hirelings, and deck. I think that might be the best value they've ever had for a Kickstarter. Super awesome. They also have this tier where you can get that $50 value that that $80 value that is being sold for $50 on the Kickstarter for free, basically. If you pledge $150, then that $150 gets applied as a credit to the pledge manager, and you can use it to buy basically any other Root product that already exists. So if you don't have everything Root at the moment and want to fill out your collection, this is a great way to do that and save some money. I, of course, already pretty much have everything, so that isn't really valuable to me. And then there's also this $250 tier where you can get everything. You know, every Kickstarter has to have one of those, but this seems like a really, really good deal as well. base game plus 4 expansions plus all of the hirelings and decks in the landmark pack, I mean, yeah, you're saving a ton of money there if you're sure that you're going to want everything Root. But if you're watching this video, I imagine you already have at least some of it. That is everything notable on the Kickstarter page. No, that's actually not true. The print and play will be released weekly starting this Friday for each of the 3 factions, and then of course they'll be iterating on those and releasing any changes that happen along the way. But yeah, this Friday, Lily Pad Diaspora coming out for print and play and a tabletop simulator mod. Maybe I'll get a game in with them, who knows. And then the Bats the week after that, and the Knaves on November 8th. So yeah, just wanted to do a quick update video on the Kickstarter because I'm really, really excited. I was excited before, but now I'm really excited. Alright, I'll see you guys.